20 tahun setelah digulingkan, Taliban kembali berkuasa setelah berhasil mengambil alih istana kepresidenan di ibu kota Kabul, Afghanistan. Taliban adalah kelompok religius dan politik ultra-konservatif yang berkembang pada pertengahan 1990-an. Kelompok Taliban muncul seiring mundurnya tentara Soviet di tanah Afghanistan. Pada tahun 2021, Taliban mulai meningkatkan intensitas pergerakan mereka setelah Amerika dan NATO memutuskan untuk menarik pasukan tentara mereka pada tanggal 4 Mei yang lalu. Satu persatu provinsi jatuh ke tangan Taliban tanpa perlawanan yang berarti dari pasukan Afghanistan. Banyak dari mereka justru kabur tanpa berusaha melawan. Presiden Ashraf Ghani yang juga melarikan diri ke negara tetangga Uzbekistan dikecam keras tidak hanya oleh warga Afghanistan tetapi juga oleh komunitas internasional. Banyak warga Afghanistan panik dan mencoba melarikan diri dari negara mereka sendiri dikarenakan kekhawatiran mereka akan terulangnya masa gelap di bawah rezim Taliban. Kali ini Mr. Tang ditemani oleh teman Mr. Tang yang berasal dari Afghanistan. Mari kita simak bahasan mengenai masalah yang sedang hot ini langsung melalui kacamata orang Afgan. Tapi sebelumnya, jangan lupa klik tombol like dan juga subscribe-nya. Nyalakan juga tombol notifikasi supaya tidak melewati video-video Mr. Tang selanjutnya. Enjoy watching. Thank you so much, Mr. X, for being here. I truly appreciate your time and courage to be speaking with us all about what is happening now in your country, Afghanistan.
Right. I mean, I appreciate the chance that you're giving me to talk because I think even if one more person gets to know about the situation through this video and through your videos, I think it's worth a lot because it is shockingly happening right now at this time, and we need to know about it. At least I think that's the least that at least maybe we can do.
Mm-hmm. I hope we can spread the story to more audience, especially in my country, Indonesia. So we will not disclose your name for safety reason. So please do not worry about that. All right. So Mr. X, could you please tell us, what is really happening right now in Afghanistan? From your point of view, despite many of us have known, about the issues from news or other media, but what is really happening right now?
So, for people who don't know about the history of Afghanistan, Afghanistan has been going through U.S. invasion, then the Civil War, then the Taliban during late 90s. And then when the 9/11 happened, the U.S. came to Afghanistan and they defeated the Taliban. So there was relatively peace in Afghanistan after the US came and the international forces came, and things were getting step by step better. Although, say, for example, in Kabul, there were some suicide attacks and there were explosions, but overall, the highest authority, which was the government, they were trying to protect people's freedom and people's basic rights, at least to some extent. I'm not saying that the government wasn't corrupt, they were corrupt, but at least for what they were standing was something that all Afghans deserved, and that's just like the basic freedom. And during the last 20 years, the Taliban did exist. They weren't really defeated. They came back because the difficult thing with insurgency is that they look like normal people with guns, and if things get a little bad for them, if for example the US forces or the Afghan national forces, they attack them, then they can just hide their guns and claim that they are local Afghans. So that's why the Taliban did exist, especially in rural areas, in the south or north south, or like especially west part of Afghanistan. But they didn't dare to actually take provinces. because then the government would attack them and take back the provinces. But it has been a few weeks that they started attacking the provincial capitals. So in Afghanistan, we have about 34 provinces, and so the Taliban started attacking the provincial capitals. And I think what they were also trying to negotiate peace with the Afghan government, but they weren't really willing to do that. So the U.S. They tried to intervene, and it has been over a year and a half that they tried to make peace between the Afghan government and the Taliban. That's what they said, but in reality, it hasn't been true. Say when the special envoy of U.S. for the peace of Afghanistan and the Taliban were meeting in Doha, like they made an agreement with the Taliban, but their agreement really didn't really include anything about the Afghans, but rather that the Americans wouldn't get attacked, and that and what that also helped was that it gave the Taliban legitimacy, so they got more recognized by the international players. That's one thing, because initially they were, and still they are, a terrorist group. But the US policy, it really failed as in the sense that it gave more authority and legitimacy to the Taliban group. That's one thing. And secondly, they even pushed the Afghan government at that time to release around 5,000 or more Taliban prisoners. And there were reports that when the Taliban were attacking the provincial capitals, the exact prisoners that they released, they were the commanders attacking. So that says how bad the policies were. Yeah, so I just shared some background to because the situation is very complex even for us. Mm-hmm. So it's I think it's important to know a little of the background. And so regardless, the Taliban were attacking like in a smaller scale, but for the past 2 or 3 weeks, they really started their offensives. Like they really started attacking the provincial capitals and taking over cities. And I think lots of other Afghans would share the same thought that I have is that when initially they started attacking some provinces, and they were just taking the provinces very easily. So we thought, or so many people thought, that maybe it's a strategy of the government that they want to concentrate their forces so that they can retake the places. Or sometimes we would just say, oh, maybe that it was just like one province. The government didn't have enough time to deploy more soldiers there to defend it. And then it was province after province falling. And last week, until Kabul fell, the speed really increased. And every time one province would fall to the Taliban, all of us, of course, were hoping so much that it would be the last one. But almost all of them fell. And like some of the largest cities besides Kabul, like Herat and Mazar Sharif, they fell right before Kabul fell to the Taliban. And for Mazar and Herat, there were some warlords who were resisting the Taliban. And lots of Afghans were hoping that these people would be able to defend the people and themselves against the Taliban. And I was hoping that as well. But it was mind-blowing that all of them got either betrayed, or they were, I don't know the reasons, but they weren't able to defeat the Taliban.
So you mentioned that for the past 2 or 3 weeks, they have become more aggressive to take over some provinces. Do you think it is because the U.S. military they left Afghanistan, right? Do you think that is one of the reasons why?
I definitely think that's one of the reasons, yes. I think no one likes foreigner forces roaming around their country, but their departure itself wouldn't be really a problem. But I think the more serious problem that lots of other people also say is that they left very irresponsibly. Like they didn't really try to. Initially, they were trying to make the peace between the Taliban and the Afghan government, and then leave the country. They did anything but that one. So that's one thing that they felt, and secondly is that they didn't really help the Afghan people to get the power to themselves. How do I say it? What I mean is that the Afghan government itself was a very corrupted government. Like the President Ghani and just his two consultants, his two secretary, they were just trying to rule the whole country. And Afghanistan is a very diverse country. Of course, that doesn't work. And they were just some corrupted people. And that, for example, the US or other international communities, I think they could do something to question these people, Ghani and the other people in the power, but they didn't do anything. So I think it was lots of things playing at the same time, in my opinion. And whoever is listening, please know that, or watching, please know that, I mean, I'm not an expert, but this is just like a local Afghans belief. So I might be wrong, but in my belief, it was the failed policy of some international players, especially the Western world, that, I mean, they could do better. And but maybe before that, and the most important failure was the Afghan government's incapability to prepare and to mobilize to do it. Because like the Taliban, although their attacks accelerated the past 2 weeks, but they were already taking a lot of ground, like say 2-3 months ago as well. And if President Ghani wouldn't be this selfish and corrupted, then he would do something to mobilize all Afghans so that they could resist the Taliban, because no one wants the Taliban. But now we are in the hands of Taliban unconditionally.
Talking about the Afghan government, I saw the news that your president fled, to Uzbekistan with a heli full of cash. What is your say on this?
Yes, it is such a. I think it's the biggest disgrace in the world that will ever exist. At least for so many, for all of Afghans. I know all of Afghans will curse him until they are dead. And he did destroy the lives of all Afghans, and then destroyed it more. Meaning that he wasn't running the government capably. Like he became the president for 2 terms. And in both terms, of course, he committed fraud. And that's how he became the president. But he was very, very close-minded, in the sense that he wouldn't trust to share power with other ethnicities or other important players in the politics or in the Afghan society. And so he failed in that part. And I mean, even if you fail in that part, when you see that things don't work out, then you can at least try to uh, admit your problem and correct things. But he just fled. Like when he saw that he couldn't hold power more, he just fled. And the worst part is that he fled like a coward. Like he left everyone back. And I think you have already maybe seen the reports that he was fleeing with so much cash that he left a lot of cash behind because he couldn't take it with him to the plane. And as an Afghan, although I never liked him and so many people didn't like him, but still, like, he is an Afghan, so it is such a shame even for us. And at this point, I hope there is a afterlife after this life, and if there is, I really hope that he gets what he deserves.
You also mentioned about the majority of people, they do not want Taliban to be there, controlling the country. But I also saw in the news that some local people, they welcomed and they praised the Taliban as their existence ensures safety in the area, they say. How do you see, those people supporting Taliban? Is it just because of the fear, or what?
I would say there could be lots of reasons, but definitely one of the reasons is fear, because they say that if you can't beat it, join it, right? I think that's definitely one of the reasons. And it's also, I think, important to know that because Afghanistan is diverse in both ethnic group and also religious sects, and also ideology, because like say so many people in the past 20 years, they could get a more liberal education, and there are people who didn't get an education, so even the ideologies are so different. And from what I understand, that some people, yes, there might be some people that like what the Taliban are doing, because they are so tired of the corruption in the Afghan government itself. That's one thing. And second thing is that especially in some insecure areas in the past, there were some and maybe many airstrikes against the Taliban. But the Taliban, sometimes they were sheltering in people's houses, and that means that civilians would get killed as well. And so civilians get killed by the Afghan government airstrikes or American airstrikes. So they have that sense of revenge as well against the government. So that's what I think, that's one reason that they might like the Taliban. But I really believe that the number of those people who genuinely like Taliban is very, very small, and they are mostly the extremist people. But secondly, right now, some people do they don't like, but they try to not resist them because they are feared of them, they are scared of them. And I think if you ask me that how would you summarize Taliban at this moment, in my mind I would say horror. And because I have been keeping in touch with my family for the past few days every time, so it's not just that how many people the Taliban kill, because that one for sure they kill a lot of people, but it's also that because there's the central government, so they rule everything, then that creates such a environment that is so horrifying for people. People have difficulty breathing, and like they are just like waiting that when they would get kicked or when they would get stoned by a Taliban, or like when some Taliban wouldn't like them and then beat them for no reason, because unlike governments, the Taliban soldiers are just like some people who just want to fight for like the extremist ideologies. So you can't expect them to be logical, right? So when like say this is what I'm scared is, like say if my mom goes to some shops, what if some Taliban sees my mom and they're like they wouldn't like the color of her burqa, they would just like beat her without any reason. And actually last time the Taliban were in power, I was just talking to my mom the other day, and she was just sharing a memory is that I was very young, so I barely remember, but for some reason it is a very strong memory in my mind that I remember the feeling of it. So me and my mom, we went to a market once in Kabul last time when the Taliban were in power. I think it was early 2001. So I was like 3 or 4 years old. And then, so my mom went to in a clothing shop to buy some clothes. And you know, in the Taliban requires women to wear that long burqa.
Yep.
But because my mom had to see the clothes and the shops are dark, so she just like took off, didn't take off, but just like put the side of burqa to see what's the clothes is. And the Taliban came and they beat my mom so much. Yeah.
Wow.
And no one can resist them, right? No one can say, why are you beating? Because they are the government. No one can dare to do that. And that's such a tragic thing that we are going in that direction again. And especially, I think, outside of Afghanistan, there are people, we call it Taliban apologists, who support Taliban for some reasons. And one of the things that I believe they say that the Taliban are changed people. They are being better now. But that's anything but the truth. And lots of Afghans, I think, believe that, because like say even right now, there are reports that because there are a lot of media in Kabul, but in other provinces, some provinces, there aren't media coverage. So their behavior in Kabul and other parts of Afghanistan is so different. And that doesn't mean that Kabul is better. Kabul, the Taliban are still going house to house and like limiting everything, going to house to look for people who are against them or work in the government, and are limiting people's freedom. But in other provinces, they are even more brutal because there is less media coverage. And that's one thing. And secondly is that right now things have just happened, so there's a lot of news about it. But every time the news slows down, once that happens, then the Taliban would be able to do anything that they want, and the international community can't really do anything, and can't and don't really want to do anything.
So do you say that the peace rhetoric from Taliban is fake?
Yes, I think it's fake, and I think they were very smart and used that peace negotiations to strategize their military offensives and strengthen their political relationships with other countries, and at the same time fragment the Afghan government.
How is your family though right now? Are they safe?
They are okay for now, yeah, and they are okay, but everyone is scared. Yeah, so everyone is scared because you don't know what to expect from them. You know that they will come and limit your freedoms, and if you have been an activist or worked with the government or somehow been connected to foreigners or even, I think, studied abroad, then you're a target, despite the claims that they say. For ordinary Afghans, they're also so scared of them.
I see. Are they planning to flee the country as well, your family?
I think at this moment, everyone is trying to flee the country, or at least most people, because it is not life to live in a constant feeling of being beaten, being killed, or being being raped or being anything. And the thing is that if the Taliban want to do it, right, you can't really go to anyone to ask for help because they are the government, and the international community doesn't really give a damn about the small things for them. So I think everyone is scared, and people do really want to leave, and I think and people should be able to leave, especially people who are more vulnerable. And but right now, I don't know what's gonna happen in the near future, but right now, say the airports, last time I checked, was closed, and airlines are locked, embassies are closed. That's one thing. And I think at this moment, even if people leave the country, then the Taliban would be asking them why are leaving, right? So they might not allow them.
So, what is the future? What will happen in the future? Do you project that the Taliban continues to take control over the country, or do you project other things happening?
And I kind of frown because the only thing we know is that we don't know. You know what I mean? Because until 1 week, Kabul was just like it was 15 years ago and was improving. Kabul was free. But now that it changed so quickly and so fast, and lots of even expert commentators or expert analysts, I think they were wrong, that they were predicting some other things and they were wrong. And even I trusted them with their analysis, etc. And I was wrong to trust them. So I think at this time we shouldn't really believe those analysts because they aren't really capable of predicting, and it might not be their problem because the situation is very uncertain and unpredictable. But one thing else for sure we know is that nothing is same as before. So it will be, in my understanding, it will be either a Taliban running the government by themselves, or some kind of transitional government or something. So we don't know that yet. But one thing we know is that the situation wouldn't be same, and a lot of people are at risk, especially the vulnerable people, minorities, be it religious or ethnic group, and activists, some journalists, and any people who can be a threat to their ideology and to their existence.
So, what can the global society do to help this situation? Is there anything that we can do as outsiders to help our family, our friends there in Afghanistan?
I think the immediate thing that the international community can do right now, and it's not too late, is to recognize and understand that there are a lot of vulnerable people in Afghanistan right now that the Taliban wouldn't like them. So, and you know what I mean by the Taliban wouldn't like them, and so I think they should open their borders. That's one thing, at least so these people can get out, because people should be free to live. I mean, come on, it's like 21st century. Like, we should be living, at least we should be having that option of living like the way we want, right? But right now that option in Afghanistan doesn't exist. It's like a whole nation being imprisoned. In even prison would be good in a sense that you wouldn't get killed in a prison, in a sense, but that thing is different. So it's like being imprisoned in a prison full of horror and fear. So I think what we all, at least I asked my international community friends, and I know the government wouldn't really listen, but I hope if the governments are listening, that they will at least give that option for the Afghans who want to escape, to be able to escape that fear and that horror and that atrocities that the Taliban would do to them. And that could be simple as opening their borders and trying to resume the commercial flights, and also giving visas to Afghans.
Even prison is more livable than Afghanistan right now, you see. This is my last question for you. What is the message you want to share to the world?
Thank you for asking that. One thing that actually I'm really thankful is that since people have got to know that the things that are going on in Afghanistan, a lot of my friends have reached out, and I'm very overwhelmingly touched by that. So that kind of makes me that everything is wrong with these politicians, but the people are very supportive and kind. So I want to thank my friends and all the people there. And secondly, as I just mentioned, is that I hope people can support some Afghans who are stuck in Afghanistan to get out, be it through educational opportunities or through citizenship or just some long-term visas, so until the situation cools down. And I think that's very important because people's lives are at risk. And I think like any other country, Afghans, they know how to work. They do the work, and they are capable of contributing to any society or community that they will go. So I hope people will recognize that and take some actions about that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, for your courage to be speaking with us again about what is happening in Afghanistan. I hope everything will be all right. Everything will get better very soon. I also wish safety and also happiness for your family and your people there in Afghanistan.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I hope peace comes everywhere.